Well, here we go again. The matches continue to come thick and fast in the EFL Championship, but this one is a little bit different because it is the first set of fixtures of 2025, new year, and hopefully from a Luton point of view, newfound optimism. We're back in the shrine of the away day defeats, but today, thankfully, we're at home as we look ahead to match week 25 in the Championship season. As always, we're going to predict and preview all 12 matches, and I'll encourage you to do exactly the same in the comments. If you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the next match week, which is coming on Thursday, because of course, we're back on Saturday with another match week. They continue every 3 days. For those of you enjoying the festive football though, let's have a quick recap before we start at what happened in Sunday's matches, because if anything, Boxing Day was a bit predictable in the Championship. Well, certainly not this match week. I'm near the top of the table and I've only picked up 7 points. Loads of shocks in there. Teams with exceptional home records failing to win, the likes of Norwich, Blackburn, Coventry, Watford, all dropping points at home. But I got one perfect score, saved by the evening kickoff, Derby 0, Leeds 1. 4 other correct outcomes for the draw in the 8 PM game, as well as home wins late on for Swansea, and then for Oxford and for Bristol City. That leaves me with 7, and I'm in, joint 6th place there. Level with Akshay, who also managed 7, well done to you. And then the 5 above me, Brian on 8 points, you're in 5th place. 3 in joint 2nd, all in single figures, which shows you how much of a lower scoring match week this was. Peter, this guy and Nigel all on 9, and top of the tree on 11 with 3 perfect scores. And most of you overtook me with that late Swansea goal. But Bobby is the star of the show this time with 11, 3 perfect scores for you, and an excellent effort. The only person in double figures this match week. That's match week 24 out the way though. Let's move on to 25, and it is 2025. So hopefully we'll be able to see something a bit different. And in my predictions, I've basically gone for goals galore and a few surprises after what we saw in the Sunday matches. So let's have a look at the first of them. It begins with Plymouth Argyle versus Bristol City. I think this fixture becomes a pretty dangerous one because Wayne Rooney is under immense pressure as Plymouth slip to the bottom of the table, 4 points from safety. They'd conceded more goals than any other team since it had been rebranded as the Championship at this stage of the season. And to be fair, a 2-0 defeat away at Oxford did not help that at all. Yes, it was a new manager bounce on the other side of things, but Plymouth beaten again, lots of fans calling for him, and he didn't really create much in that game. Yes, they tried to create a few half chances, set pieces, had some long range efforts, but in terms of what was clear cut in that game, Oxford definitely had the better of it. So another away defeat for Plymouth, and we said it early in the season, that home form becomes so important. They're up against a Bristol City side who have had a brilliant Christmas so far. Terrible game against Luton, but won it 1-0. Then flew out the traps against Pompey, 3-0 up at half-time, and kept 2 clean sheets in a row. It's something that generally we have said is better about Bristol City this year. Defensively, only just conceding over 1 a game. And I know they've still had a few where they've conceded late goals, but generally much better. And in that game, it was basically the reverse of the away game at Portsmouth. They were absolutely brilliant in that one and made sure they got revenge. So a very strange spell for Bristol City in their last 6. Obviously a 3-0 win and defeat against Pompey. Couple of draws, a defeat and a win. I mean, you just do not know what to go for with them. The problem is, and even a Bristol City fan say it in the comments, you're never going to get 3 or 4 great performances and clean sheets in a row. Plymouth almost look like they're lying down. They lose games heavily away from home, but their last home game against Middlesbrough, they drew 3-3. They do often score goals at home. I feel like I'm going to throw in a surprise here, and I know the Bristol City fans are going to get me for this, but I've been scarred by 4.5 years of doing these predictions. I'm going to go for Plymouth to win and Wayne Rooney's blushes to be spared. I'm going for Plymouth Argyle at home by 3-2 against Bristol City. A thriller. Let's move on to the second early kickoff, which is QPR versus Watford. Watford lost their incredible home record in this game of 2-1 defeat at home to Cardiff, which nobody saw coming, and a pretty poor performance. Conceding in the first minute, it went downhill from there. Only managed 1 shot on target in the whole game. Probably had 2 good chances that I can think of from the extended highlights, but had lots of the ball. Didn't really know how to break down a team that sat really deep behind them. And maybe that's going to be something moving forward that other teams take on, because Watford are so good on the counter-attack. They've got players who can get into space, who can run the channels, but have they got that guile to cut open a defence? Maybe not in more than 1 or 2 places, albeit the home record's been exceptional and are still right up there. It could just be a one-off day, but it does mean they need to find a way to improve their away form, and QPR are a team that have been picking up recently. 3 home wins in a row, albeit a frustrating Christmas so far. Not a bad 1-1 draw away at Norwich, but yes, before the game they might have taken it. Yes, they would have got a point without having a shot on target, which is remarkable. They didn't show a lot in that game. Norwich had chances to probably get 2 or 3, but to concede late on is always gut-wrenching, isn't it? But I think overall on the balance of the game, QPR will probably be delighted with a point when they look back at it. It has been a poor festive period for them though. They lost 3-0 at Swansea. They were outplayed by Norwich, but at home they've been much better recently. We know Watford aren't the best on the road. Their last one, okay, a defeat at Burnley, but then before that couldn't break down Hull. I just don't know whether QPR are going to go out and be aggressive or whether they'll almost set up like the away team. Again, I've got a feeling the home side win here. New Year's Day, we're coming to the end of a run. And a lot of these teams that have had a decent spell over the festive period, they are ones that have been at home twice. So I'm going to go for QPR to get the victory here. I'm going to go by 2-1. But it becomes a very hard game to predict after the last couple of weeks. And the final early kickoff is, well, finally, the long-awaited debut for Alex Neil as Millwall host Oxford United. Gary Rowett going back to the Den in what, just his 3rd game and his first away game with Oxford United. But boy, aren't they in a better position now. 2 successive victories. Yes, at home to the 2 weakest sides in the division at the time of playing them. They beat Cardiff and Plymouth back-to-back. They're battered Plymouth, to be honest. They were the better side. They had the better chances. Yes, they didn't carve them open hundreds of times. Didn't create loads of great opportunities. But Oxford get into good positions. They've got a lot of players who can hit a good one from 20-25 yards. They've got a lot of players who are starting to improve as well. Pachetta's someone who is really coming of age now here. We've seen moments of magic from Harris, from Goodrum, from the likes this season. And they've got clever players in there in Brannigan and Rodriguez as well. So at home, you'll always bank on them to open the door against teams. What we haven't seen from Oxford this season is any indication that they can get results away from home. And this in Gary Rowett's first game will be a real test against a club where there's a lot of emotion held. He took Millwall to very big heights and almost the playoffs in the EFL Championship in the last couple of years. However, this time, Millwall are looking to build on a solid foundation set by Neil Harris, and now with Alex Neil in after a 0-0 draw away at Coventry, where I think the aim of the game was frustration rather than anything spectacular. Neither side created many chances, but Millwall, as you would expect, gave up a lot of the ball, didn't really try to play passing football. They went direct. Their passing completion was one of the lowest seen by any championship side this season. And it has been a little bit of a sticky run, but largely playing against top sides. So at home, with a new manager bounce, and after Oxford having that flying start with 2 home results, I just think this might be a bit of a stalemate. It's the hardest one to predict because we've no idea what's going to happen. I'm going to sit with the Championship's favourite scoreline, which is what I do when I don't know these things. I think Oxford will play for a draw. Millwall will be forced to try and break them down. And I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. On to the 3 p.m. kickoffs, and we start with, well, it should have been the B word, shouldn't it? Burnley versus Stoke City. Could have been a home banker. But where did that result come from for Stoke? A 92nd minute winner against Sunderland in a game where they were second best for the most part. But interim management doing the job after Nasi Palak was finally let go. We talked about it being the wrong appointment from the start. Didn't create bundles in that match, Stoke. They were hanging on a little bit. But they nicked one, and they nicked a win, and my God, did they need it. Up to 25 points now, and a bit of a breather from that relegation danger. Whereas Burnley continued the unbeaten run, but again, it's breaking teams down that is the problem. A 0-0 draw away at Middlesbrough. Only 1 shot on target, albeit they probably had the best couple of the game on the counter-attack. However, it was a game in which they struggled to break down a strong opposition who have kept clean sheets at home themselves. So, a good run for Burnley. I think they'll be pretty happy, having played Middlesbrough, Sheffield United and Norwich and Watford in the last 4 to have 10 points. But this is then a game you've got to capitalise. We expect Stoke to sit behind the ball. They may or may not have a new manager in place for the time at the time of recording. On Monday morning, they don't. I'm going to go for Burnley to win it, and to win it pretty comfortably, because Stoke, look, defensively, they're not generally great. And even though they got a clean sheet against Sunderland, they gave away chances. So I'm going to go for 2-0 to Burnley. Let's move on to the second 3 p.m. kickoff, which is Cardiff City versus Coventry City. Coventry frustrated against Millwall, loads of possession, bundles of passes completed, one shot on target, one good chance in the game. And actually, Millwall probably had a few more than them in the end. So, really disappointing performance. Couldn't break down a side the way they were playing. And when they're coming up against a tougher defence than perhaps Plymouth or Hull, it was a difficult day for them at home. And given their away form this season, that will be a concern because Coventry have got to start picking up points on the road. Haven't done so since they played Millwall, ironically, back at the start of December. For Cardiff, a much needed victory against Watford. We mentioned the fact that it wasn't Watford's best performance, but you've got to give credit to Cardiff. They gave up the ball, they came with a game plan, and they took their chances on the counter-attack. Callum Robinson having a really good day. Has got those moments of magic in him. But Cardiff have got to stop conceding. Yes, it was only one this time, but that's 12 in their last 6 now. They're still in that relegation zone. Can they find a result? This game's going to be difficult. I think Coventry on the counter-attack are fairly strong. It's whether Cardiff set up like a home team or not. We've not really seen them successfully play on the counter at home too many times this season. So as a result, I'm going to go for a Coventry surprise away win here. Whether it's that much of a surprise, I don't know. But by 2-1 for Frank Lampard's side. Next up, we move on to the new table toppers, Leeds United, who host Blackburn. This is a really difficult game for me because we know what's going to happen. We know how both teams are going to set up. Leeds won 1-0 at Derby where they had to break down a very tough defence. Brendan Aronson producing that moment of magic. But look, Leeds should have won that game by 4 or 5. And again, we've said it's the only criticism of Leeds away from home. They just don't take their chances. I think on the clear-cut stats, there were 5 in that one. While at Stoke, it should have been 4. But in the end, it was a really comfortable victory in terms of the performance. And Leeds do look like the best team in the Championship at the minute. At home, they've generally not had problems winning or scoring. But Blackburn are one of those sides that can do that. Yes, they're in a little bit of a sticky run now. It's just falling away very slightly. A 1-0 defeat at home to Hull was probably one of the surprises of the weekend. Yes, they conceded late, but they didn't create a huge amount. It was a game that probably should have had more goals than it did. Both teams had a few clear-cut chances, but Blackburn didn't get a lot on target. They didn't have their shooting boots on. I think maybe we call it an off day because, look, at home to Sunderland, it was a really good game of football. Away at Millwall, a lot of teams can be frustrated. And prior to that, they were on a great run of victories. But the problem for Blackburn now, they're just starting to concede goals. I think we know how this game's going to go. Leeds will keep the ball. They'll have it in that middle third continuously. Blackburn will sit in a very deep defensive line. And they'll try and get out on the counter. Whether or not they will, I'm not sure. Leeds like a home clean sheet. And it's 3 in a row overall at the moment as well. I have to go with my favourite Leeds scoreline, which is a 1-0 home victory. But if they score early and force Blackburn out, maybe they can get 2 or 3. I'm going to go for 1-0. Into the second half, and thank goodness Luton Town are at home. They face Norwich City in a game that is important for both sides now. Norwich just drifting away from that playoff chase after a 1-1 draw against QPR. After getting that much-needed victory, they couldn't take advantage despite dominating a game. To not concede a shot on target was probably one of their best defensive performances in a long time, and still be losing in the 89th minute is remarkable. They didn't really take their chances though. That ruthless streak wasn't there. Didn't hit the target too often and didn't take 2 or 3 glorious chances to win it. In the end, though, they did save the game late on and they can continue that little unbeaten run they've started. For Luton, I don't know what to say. And I don't want to blame something that isn't him on him, but we didn't have a red card last season when we were in the Premier League. We were one of the fairest teams and we were always having a go. But the discipline has been lost in terms of performance and in terms of cards. I feel a bit for young Joe Johnson because, look, he wouldn't be playing if everyone's fit. He'd be out on loan getting experience in League 2 or the National League or something. But a second yellow card really cost us in that game. We were just getting into the ascendancy at 1-1. Carlton Morris' early goal was chalked back before half-time, but Luton started the second half okay. They got a little foothold into the game around the hour mark, and then it just forced us into defence. And if there's one thing we know at the moment, Luton don't win away from home, and they're not picking up points either. It's a 2-1 defeat. That late goal was crushing, but Swansea deserved to win it. They dominated the ball. They dominated most of the game. And if it wasn't for the early mess defensively, they would have had a comfortable day at the office. So Luton Town unable to win on the road. They're scraping out victories at home. And looking over their shoulder, just 4 points from the drop zone now. We know it's going to be a busy January. However, there's got to be results in the meantime. This one, part of me wants to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline, but Norwich haven't been great on the road either. So I am going to go for Luton Town to nick a victory. Seems to be the regular score at home at the moment. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Luton, and hopefully 2025 will be better because Luton Town, they can win when they're playing in orange. On to another big game for a home side at the bottom. It is Portsmouth versus Swansea City. Pompey, back-to-back away defeats over the festive period, but this one wasn't close, was it? Over at half-time, away at Bristol City, a 3-0 defeat. Really poor performance, didn't create a lot, gave up tons of chances. It was just a really poor day at the office. And look, we've mentioned it before, and it was mentioned by a couple of Pompey fans in the Discord. Look, they either lose heavily or they lose in the last minute away from home. However, they've been much better at home recently. The draw against Norwich, but also comfortable wins against Bristol City and Coventry. Are they going to have another Callum Lang day of magic? I'm not so sure about that. They come up against Swansea, who won their back-to-back home games, and they dominated them both. I know we mentioned they left it late against Luton against 10 men. We do have to be fair, though. They flew out the traps against QPR, and they were dominant for the most part against Luton. They had a couple of little spells, and obviously there's the odd defensive mistake in them, which wasn't there earlier in the season. It's just about whether they can see goals for fun now. I think they will. They've struggled on the road a bit. Yes, they won at Plymouth, but they played okay at Luton in a 1-1 draw. They were beaten at Hull. They've been a little bit disappointing on that front recent weeks. So I'm going to go for Pompey to continue their good home form. I do think it's going to get tight down at the bottom. I'm going to go for them to win by 3-1. The Swansea have got a defensive ricket in them at the minute. Let's move back up to Yorkshire for the next one. It is Sheffield Wednesday versus Derby County. Both sides had disappointing days on Sunday. However, not been the worst spell for each of them overall. Derby had won both of their last 2 home games before Sunday, which was crucial. However, they were played off the park by Leeds United. Weren't the first side to be so this season and won't be the last. To keep it to 1-0 was a good effort, but that was more because Leeds didn't take chances than Derby being defensively good. We know they've got a wretched away record. We saw against Luton, they just can't find a way to get over the line. And for Sheffield Wednesday, while they did have a disappointing day against Preston, overall it's been a very solid season. A 3-3 draw against Middlesbrough where they came back from behind, followed up by throwing it away second half against Preston. A 3-1 victory for the home team in what was a fairly even game, but Preston forced Sheffield Wednesday to have the ball and try and open them up. Almost tried to play like the away team, and Sheffield Wednesday just couldn't do it, unfortunately. Lots of chances, didn't hit the target much, didn't create too many great opportunities. And in the end, you probably have to say they were outdone tactically on that game, which doesn't often happen with Danny Roll. But a really good season for them. I think they continue it here. We know what Derby's game plan will be on the road. They're having a solid season themselves, their first year back up. The objective is to survive. They're 6 points clear and 6 positions clear at the minute. I'm going to go for them to be defeated here narrowly, with Sheffield Wednesday winning by 1-0. The final 3 p.m. kickoff comes at the Hawthorns as West Bromwich Albion host Preston North End. We just mentioned Preston, tactically excellent at home to Sheffield Wednesday and make it back-to-back home wins. Really good results for Paul Heckingbottom. And I mentioned it, they've been playing better under him. I know they've had the odd bad day, but they were getting there. And on this occasion, they did create good chances, which has to be applauded. They're starting to spread the goals around a bit too, which will help them also. For West Brom, considering they're surprisingly managerless over the festive period and that they had that disappointing day at Derby, a really decent performance and result of Sheffield United. Yes, in the first half, Sheffield United got the opener, they did well, but West Brom, thanks to a brilliant Carlan Grant goal at a fantastic time just before the break, went in with their tails up, played really well second half. And while Sheffield United had a couple of great chances in the game, West Brom had more of them. They were incisive on the counter-attack. They did open Sheffield United up, which doesn't often happen to them at home. So a really decent performance and encouraging signs that maybe there will be life after Corberan. They need a new manager in and sorted soon. Be interesting to see if it does go to Johnny Heitinga, who's the favourite at the time of recording. But in this game, I'm going to go for a West Brom win. Preston on the road haven't quite been the same. I know they had a good one at Cardiff, but everyone was winning there at the time. Otherwise, they've been in tight games. West Brom have started to score a bit more frequently now as well. So I'm going to go for West Brom to win by 2-1 at home to Preston. As we move on to the 5:30 kickoff, and normally my source of the perfect score over the festive fixtures, let's have a look at Hull City versus Middlesbrough. What a win for Hull City, 1-0 away at Blackburn. Not many teams winning there this season, and they were decent value for it as well. It was a strange game where both teams created great chances on the counter. Probably could have been 2 or 3 on another day, but Hull City nicked it. It's a really important result for Ruben Sellers. Keeps them out the relegation zone with Cardiff City winning as well. But the performances aren't quite there consistently yet. For Middlesbrough, a 0-0 draw after back-to-back 3-3 draws Very strange festive period for them. They restricted Burnley magnificently. It wasn't a great game of football, let's be completely honest, but did have a chance to nick it. Can't really complain at a 0-0 score. I don't think either side really got any ascendancy to win it. For Middlesbrough, it's just the inconsistency at both ends of the pitch. They go in streaks of scoring. Defensively, they throw away leads quite regularly. They've conceded three times in their last 6 matches. That form isn't going to keep you in the playoffs too regularly, but they are goal scorers on their day. Hull City, it's going to be interesting to see how they set up because Ruben Sellers at Reading away from home used to set up quite cautiously, but we know what the mantra is from the chairman there. We know they're going to try and be a bit more aggressive, but against Preston on the road, they were poor. They did get that crucial home win against Swansea, but again, not the most convincing in the world. I think Borough will be too strong. On a hunch, I'm going to go for Middlesbrough to win, and I'm going to go comfortably by 2-0, which could prove stupid, given Borough's inconsistency in front of goal. And the final game is a blockbuster clash at the top of the table. 4th v 2nd, Sunderland v Sheffield United is the 8 PM kickoff at the Stadium of Light. Sunderland, well, just shocked late on by Stoke, weren't they? A 92nd minute Tom Cannon goal after they pretty much dominated the game. We've mentioned this with Sunderland. They've got moments of magic in them, but have they got that goal scorer who's consistently going to take chances? At the moment, that's probably what's costing them being closer to that top 2. If they can find someone who can score 10 goals in January between then and the end of the season, that could be a real force because defensively, while they do concede in most games, they have got a pretty decent structure. It's often they concede when they're chasing the game too much. So I don't think they should be too disappointed by the performance of Stoke, but the result will be aggravating. They've got to make sure that it doesn't cause a hangover though, because Sheffield United have not had the best festive period themselves, struggling with defensive numbers and had 2 very tough games. Played against 2 of the top 8, but Sunderland are in that mix as well. Defeat at home to Burnley, followed by a draw against West Brom. And we mentioned it a few moments ago. West Brom in that early period of the second half, they took the ascendancy and they could have got themselves into the lead. But Sheffield United clung on. And you know what? When you look over the season, with the players that are unavailable defensively, I think they'll consider that a pretty good result. Without the skipper in the centre of the park providing that stability, a very young and inexperienced bench as well, I think they'll be pleased just to get out of that unscathed. So a point of good result for them here. I think it might be the same approach. We're going to see Sheffield United sit behind the ball, try and be defensively solid. They're not going to be able to open up in a way they would normally. And given that Sunderland can be frustrated by teams, we saw it at home to Bristol City. We saw it for large parts at home to Stoke as well as the away game too. They're relying on moments of magic. They're relying on something from distance from one of their superstar youngsters. So I think we're going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline to finish, but both sides in a really good position and having a really good season. 1-1 is the score I'm going for. So with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted for the New Year's Day fixtures. I've gone for 2 home teams to score 3, and surprisingly, they're the bottom 2, Plymouth, Argyle and Portsmouth. Don't say I never go for wild predictions there. I've also gone for Leeds United to keep setting the pace at the top with a 1-0 win against Blackburn Rovers. And then surprisingly, I've gone for Gary Rowett to get a draw on his return to Millwall in what should be Alex Neil's first game in charge at the Den. A 1-1 draw in the evening game as well. But do you agree or disagree with my predictions? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, give us your scores for the New Year's Day fixture list. If you beat or match my overall prediction score, you will get a shout out in Thursday's episode when we look ahead to a big weekend in the EFL Championship. The last game before the FA Cup third round and a week and a half off for everyone. So if you did enjoy this one, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe and turn that notification bell on to make sure you don't miss a thing over the next few weeks. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a few more manager specials. Thank you very much for watching and your continued massive support over this festive period. I really have appreciated it. And we've got a background back for today. Let's hope Luton can start 2025 with a home win. And I'll see you on Thursday to reflect on all of the games.